So next week we'll discuss the Jacob story. So please read Genesis 25 verse 19 to 35 verse 29. And there's a lot there, and we won't be able to do justice to it. But I think we'll do enough to hopefully pique your interest to read and think more on your own. As you read the story, try to decide whether the author is trying to make you like or dislike Jacob. You know, whether to look up to him or look down on him. Okay. A more pointed assignment, when Jacob returns from Haran to Canaan, he meets Esau again en route for the first time since that fateful day 20 years prior. The biblical author tells us about how Jacob prepares for that meeting and how he orders his camp for it. The author devotes a lot of space to this preparation in chapters 32 and 33. Why? What are we supposed to get from this section? You know, beyond this bizarre tiny bit about God's messenger or God himself fighting with Jacob and giving him a new name, Israel, which is why we know these people as the children of Israel, or the Israelites, rather than the Jacobites. So that's one assignment. You know, what to make of this long section about Jacob's preparation for the meeting. And then another assignment, see if you can identify how the author shapes your thinking of Leah. You know, what does the author how does the author make you think what you think about Leah? Okay, how does he manipulate you to, not manipulate, how does his use of words and scenes make you think what you think of Leah, or develop your impression of Leah? Now, speaking of the two sisters, I want to draw your attention to a small but significant detail that the author inserts into Rachel's deathbed scene. It's 35 verse 16 to 20. It's a detail that is obscured from your view because you're not reading in the original Hebrew. Rachel died when giving birth to Benjamin. And the text suggests that her death is connected to the sin she had committed against her father. You know, she had stolen and hid Laban's pagan accoutrements when Jacob's family left or fled Haran for Canaan. Or Aram. When Laban discovered the theft, he chased Jacob's family and demanded to search everywhere, everything. And as he's searching, Rachel sat on the stolen items and refused to be searched, claiming feminine problems. You know. Now Jacob, who didn't know that Rachel had taken these holy items, assumed that Laban was lying to him again, or lying about him again. And so, because he was convinced that Laban was just making it up, Jacob swore that the person who will be found in possession of Laban's items would not live. So did Rachel die because of her sin against her father, or because of Jacob's oath? You know, who is responsible? Rachel herself or Jacob, who had labored for 14 years to win her hand? And the nice thing in this scene that I told you is that they both give their own answer to this question in the names that they give the child born at Rachel's deathbed. Rachel named him, as she passed away, Ben Oni, the son of my crime, Aven, Aleph Vav Nun, is a synonym for bad deed or crime or sin. So she calls him Ben Oni, son of my crime. Whereas Jacob, who up until this point had never meddled in naming any of his sons, okay, Jacob calls him Benjamin, son of the right hand, son of the. This is how you make an oath, okay. So, son of the oath. Okay. So, what you have here is in the last scene of their love story, Jacob and Rachel both try to lift the burden of guilt from one another. Each tries to take responsibility for Rachel's death. She tying it to her own lie and theft, and he to his foolhardy oath. Okay, so the story that starts with a kiss at the well, with the 14 years, ends with this. And one last thing about Jacob, okay, that scene that I mentioned earlier. So we don't have time to discuss his fight with God's messenger or angel. But the story is quite bizarre in that we do not understand its purpose. Why does God send someone to wrestle with Jacob? If God wants to bless Jacob and change his name to Israel, why was it necessary to fight beforehand? And why there? And why then? The day before he's going to meet Esau. Yeah. So as you read it in Genesis 32, remember the context. Jacob is on the verge of panic, pleading for divine protection, and also devising all sorts of quite clever schemes to protect his family and possessions from the anticipated wrath of Esau. He then goes to sleep in his camp before the next morning's meeting with his brother. But then, okay, so he goes to sleep after being anxious and asking for God's help and making all these protections against Esau. And then he goes to sleep. But then, in 32:23, Jacob rises in the middle of the night and moves his family across the Yebok river, however it's pronounced in English. So it tells you that he went to sleep, and then in the middle of the night he gets up and moves his family in the middle of the night across the river. Not an easy thing. Okay, so he's still restless, cannot sleep, fearing that his schemes are not enough protection. What he devised in order to protect his family from Esau's violence. Okay, he fears that that's not enough. And thus, he moves his family back across the river in the middle of the night. So just for the sake of geography, to get a sense of what we're talking about, the Yebok is a tributary of the Jordan River flowing east to west into the Jordan River. Okay, so the Jordan River flows north to south, and the Yebok flows in what is today the Kingdom of Jordan from east to west into the Jordan River. Okay, so we have to assume that Jacob had already crossed the river and was now on its southern bank. Okay, so we have to because to assume the opposite would mean that Jacob was camped on the Yebok's northern bank, and then he wakes in the middle of the night to move his family across the river southward, closer to the source of danger that's approaching from the south. Okay, that makes no sense at all. Okay. To move his family that he just devised all these protections for his family, and now he's going to move them across the river to be closer to Esau? Okay? So we have to presume that since Jacob was heading south, that he was camped on the Yebok's southern bank, but now suddenly he moved his family back to the northern bank of the Yebok to place the river between his family and Esau, who was going to approach from the south with his 400 men. And that is when Jacob is attacked by the angel. And he then spends the remainder of the night fighting with that angel. This is in chapter 32, 25 to 33. Yeah. Now, we can make sense of this divine attack on Jacob by speculating on the purpose of the overnight river crossing. Okay. So perhaps Jacob did not move his family north of the river to just add one more protective measure against Esau's wrath. Rather, perhaps Jacob lost his nerve and was fleeing back north. Okay? If we know that Jacob feared that all of his protective and pacifying measures weren't enough to deflect and contain Esau's wrath, again, why else cross the river back up north? Okay? And if we know that Jacob feared that God won't protect him, which again, why else remind God of his promise? You know, Jacob reminds God, hey, remember you promised me protection. Okay, so if we know that Jacob feared that those measures weren't enough to dissuade Esau from killing them all, and if we know that Jacob feared that God won't protect him, then why should we assume that Jacob would push past these fears and proceed to the ominous meeting with his brother? Okay. Now, this interpretation, which follows the Rashbam, which is who is a medieval commentator on the Bible, and follows more recently Professor Jonathan Grossman, who's a modern literary critic, literary analyst of the Bible. So this interpretation, what I just suggested, can answer the questions of why fight, why here, and why now. Okay? If Jacob is running away back north, away from Canaan, away from his own promised land, then God's messenger was sent to prevent his flight. God's messenger literally held him and all night and prevented him from leading his family away from Esau, away from the land of Israel. At the break of dawn, Jacob begs the attacker to let him go. You know, look at verse 27. Let me go, for the dawn is breaking. Okay, this is Jacob's last chance to get out of Dodge. But we found out immediately in Genesis 31, verse 1, that in fact it is too late. As soon as the angel departs, okay, so Jacob says, let me go because the dawn is coming. And the angel lets him go, blesses him, gives him a new name. And as soon as the angel leaves, Jacob lifts his eyes and sees Esau and his 400 men approaching. Okay, so Jacob said, let me let, so my last chance. Too late. Okay, so the angel held him there all night. And now Jacob had no choice but to go through with the dreaded meeting, which will pave his return to the land of Israel. Okay. Now, the key to this interpretation of our reading of the key to this reading of verse 27 is, who is it who says, let me go for the dawn is breaking? Okay? There are only two options. Either the angel begs Jacob to let him go, or Jacob begs the angel to let him go. Option one is the traditional reading of the overwhelming majority of commentators and translators, which I'm sure you'll see in your version. The angel begs Jacob to let him go. Okay, at which point Jacob demands a blessing, and the angel thus gives him a blessing in the form of giving Jacob a new name, Israel. Okay, so in the Hebrew version, it's unclear who is asking, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." It says he said, and it's unclear if he is Jacob or he is the angel. In many translations, this is, because it's unclear, it is, the translator solves the problem for you, says the angel, the angel said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." Okay, problem solved. Okay. But why would the angel ask Jacob to release him? First, Jacob didn't attack this man, who we now know is an angel. Okay. Jacob wasn't, or a messenger, I guess. Jacob didn't attack him. Jacob wasn't trying to detain the angel. We know that Jacob we know that Jacob has things that he needs to do today. So we can see why he wants to be freed of this mysterious assailant. Okay. Are we expected to think that the angel has some morning appointment that he needs to keep? Hey, it's dawn, let me go. Okay, so Jacob is the one whose time is precious to him. Number one. Number two, I guess number one, Jacob never attacked him. Jacob would gladly let him go. You attacked me. Number two, Jacob has things to do this morning. The angel does not. And third, why would the angel beg to be released in verse 27 if he has magical power, which he just used in verse 26 to gain the upper hand over Jacob? And also, again, if we follow the logic of option one, how can we make sense of Jacob asking for a blessing? Again, the option one meaning that it is the angel asking to release me. Please release me, it's dawn. Okay, so if we're to follow that logic, how can we make sense of Jacob asking for a blessing? Okay, after all, Jacob doesn't yet know that this is an angel. Okay, he thinks it's just a man, a highway robber who's trying to kill him. Okay, so if we're saying that the angel says, "Let me go, the dawn is coming," and Jacob says, "Only if you bless me," that makes no sense. Okay? Because look, we understand him asking for a blessing in the context of him knowing that it's an angel, but he didn't know it was an angel. If I'll say it this way, the verses tell us that a man came and attacked him. Okay, so if Jacob knew that this was a messenger from God, that this was an angel, he wouldn't have fought. He would have submitted and bowed to this assailant. Okay. So again, the option, the first option, that the angel is asking to please let me go, doesn't make sense in a variety of ways. Okay. Now, the word blessing in Hebrew, including biblical Hebrew, can mean blessing like in English. Again, offering someone a spiritual gift or a spiritually sanctified gift. But it could also mean a greeting, okay? Bidding someone to come in peace or go in peace. Okay? It's the same word in Hebrew. Okay? Levarech. Okay? So it could mean a blessing, it could mean a greeting. Greeting hello or greeting goodbye. And so again, if you consider option one, that the angel is begging to please let me go, it doesn't make sense that Jacob is asking for a blessing like from an angel. But even if it's just in the meaning of asking for a greeting, farewell in this case, it's odd for Jacob to demand that his assailant leave on good terms, bid me farewell. Okay? So I think a more reasonable, less problematic interpretation is option 2. The angel was sent to stop Jacob's flight and occupy him overnight till it was too late to flee. As the dawn is breaking, Jacob begs him to release him, and the angel demands a blessing, okay, or greeting. The only hitch then with this option 2 interpretation is, why on earth would the angel ask Jacob for a blessing? Okay? And here the alternate meaning, or the other meaning of the words bless might be apt. Okay? The angel agrees to let Jacob go only if Jacob agrees to part on good terms. Only if Jacob understands that the assailant was not Jacob's enemy, but his benefactor. So, again, like I said, it's a bizarre story, and it requires a lot of thought to see what it could mean, what it means, and it requires going through a text that does not have punctuation marks, and in which language is not clear on the dialogue, on the participants in the dialogue, who is speaking, and so you have to kind of break it down and use logic to understand the purpose of each speaker, in order to decide which is the more reasonable interpretation. Who is speaking here and who is speaking there. Okay, see you next week. Bye-bye.